Albania is a country in southern Europe that borders Greece, but around 600 years ago it was part of the Ottoman Empire, an expanse that, at the time, consisted of modern-day Turkey, Greece, Bulgaria, Albania, and much of the southern Balkan Peninsula. Under Ottoman control, Albanian feudal lords were replaced with Ottoman Timurids, or landowners, and tensions climbed. In the year 1432, Andrea Thopia defeated a small Ottoman force in the mountains of central Albania. Soon, Albanian lords and chieftains learned of this, and smaller conflicts and battles ensued. Albanian rebels called on that of George Arianidi. He led many campaigns against the Ottomans and eliminated most of the Ottoman estates in Albania. Arianidi's success strengthened his movement and Albania as a whole. In the winter of 1432 and 1433, he ambushed and defeated an army of thousands of Ottoman men under Ali Beg. They were sent from a camp in Macedonia into the tight valleys of southern Albania. In 1434, more Ottoman armies were assembled, once again being defeated in south-central Albania. But in 1436, under Tarahan Bey, a massive army was created, and despite the Albanians' victories, the revolt was extinguished. Throughout the rest of 1436, Ottoman forces marched through the Albanian territories, killing civilians in mass amounts, ending the revolt for now. While this was happening, a new figure arose. George Castrioti was born on May 5, 1405, near the city of Kruye. His father's name was John Castrioti, who was vassalized by the Ottoman Empire. As tribute, when he was born, he was delivered as a hostage to the Sultan, and he was soon converted to the Islamic religion in Turkey. He was schooled in the city of Edirne to become a military general. His name was changed from George Castrioti to Iskander, or Alexander. During military school, he gained the title of Bey, which means Lord. At some point, these merged together, and he became known by Skanderbeg.
Almost a decade after George Arianidi's defeat in the fall of 1443 during an Ottoman campaign in Serbia, Ottoman forces engaged in the Battle of Nice, in which the Ottoman army, accompanied by Skanderbeg, was decisively defeated by an Hungarian army led by John Hunyadi. After the defeat, Skanderbeg fled to the city of Kruye, where he declared independence from the Ottoman throne. Along with other Albanian lords, Skanderbeg raised an army to reconquer Albanian lands. Albanian forces were able to conquer most of modern-day Albania without facing much resistance from the Ottomans, since the Ottoman army had been in a state of disarray after its defeat at Nice. Soon the need arose for the establishment of a centralized Albanian resistance. This need prompted Skanderbeg to hold a meeting between Albanian lords in the city of Lezhë, where an alliance between Albanian lords was established. This alliance became known as the League of Lezhë, which consisted of a loose confederation of the nobles of Albania, whose agendas deviated and often clashed with the agendas of other lords. Though it was plagued with infighting, the League of Lezhë would have to prove to be a unified force in order to once for all establish an Albanian state.
The Venetians' early support of Skanderbeg and the League of Lezhë began to fade as his power grew on the border of Venetian Adriatic assets. The Albanians now contradicted with the interests of Venice and her people, and many small conflicts and battles between them ensued. One of those was over the fortress of Dagenham, which sparked a conflict between the two powers. There were even high offerings for the assassination of Skanderbeg and other Albanian lords. The Republic of Venice soon had an alliance with the Ottomans, encouraging campaigning into Albania. While Venice seized the fortress at Dagenham, the Ottomans led an army to the castle of Svetingrad. A disruption in the fortress's water supply caused the men inside to make an offer to the army besieging them, trading the fortress for fair and safe passage through Ottoman lines. The surrender of Svetingrad in late July of 1448 lost control of an important foothold in Macedonia. Facing this massive task in front of him, on the fields outside of Scutari in late 1448, Skanderbeg led a force against the Venetian army, chasing them to the very gates of Scutari and destroying the army in a matter of hours while succumbing to minimal casualties. The loss of Venetian defenses in Albania quickly led to a peace treaty with Skanderbeg and the League of Lezhë. Although this did not stop the overall Ottoman war at the moment, it did help on the Albanian side and showed the force of Skanderbeg and the Albanian peoples.
In the spring of 1450, Murad II, accompanied by his son Mehmed II, led an army of 100,000 into Albanian lands, besieging the city of Kruye. With an Ottoman victory over Skanderbeg seemingly inevitable, Albanian nobles began to leave the League of Lezhë, until the League finally disbanded. Although the dissolution of the League wiped out the central organizational structure of the rebellion, many peasants and lesser lords still loyal to Skanderbeg continued to hold out in Kruye. As the city of Kruye held throughout the spring and summer of 1450, the Ottoman besiegers became reliant on Venetian supplies, which were provided by Venice for fears of an Albanian occupation of Venetian Adriatic assets. Even with Venetian supplies, the Ottoman force struggled to prolong the siege through the fall. As the first signs of winter appeared in the mountains of Albania, it became apparent to the Ottomans that their supplies would not last them through the winter. With this knowledge, the Ottoman army retreated out of Albanian lands. With his feared victory against the tremendous Ottoman force, Skanderbeg's name spread throughout Europe. Many lords and adventurers from throughout Europe joined the ranks of Skanderbeg, including King Alfonso V of Naples, who in return for Skanderbeg recognizing Neapolitan sovereignty, allied with Skanderbeg against the Ottomans. Because of his success passes, Skanderbeg began to receive seemingly endless amounts of supplies from European rulers. With his army's ranks replenished, and the men within them well fed and armed, Skanderbeg called upon his army to rebuild and fortified Kruja and the rest of Albanian lands still loyal to Skanderbeg. During the early months of 1451, Skanderbeg consolidated power within Albania, conquering the lands of nobles who had withdrawn from the League of Lezet during the siege of Kruja. Skanderbeg made peace with the second most powerful Albanian lord and former Albanian separatist George Arianiti by marrying his daughter to Arianiti's son. From 1451 until 1454, Albania was subject to multiple Ottoman invasions, which were all swiftly defeated by Skanderbeg's army. At this point, European rulers began to fear Ottoman expansion. This fear drove more European leaders to support Albania, as its lands were crucial in securing the Italian peninsula. This new threat to Venice's Adriatic dominance caused the Republic to seek an end to Venetian-Albanian aggression. This effort led to Venice directly supporting Albania financially. Across Albania's northern border, the newly crowned Ottoman Sultan, Mehmed II, led an invasion of Serbia in the spring of 1455. In reaction to the invasion, Skanderbeg, along with his army, moved north to harass the Ottoman-held territories in the south of Serbia. While besieging the fortress of Berat, Skanderbeg's forces were ambushed by an Ottoman force of 40,000 men. This army had been led into Albania unopposed by Musi Golemi, who had betrayed Skanderbeg, and had let the Ottoman army enter Albania. This attack caught Skanderbeg by surprise, leading to a decisive Ottoman victory. Using the Ottomans' victory at Berat as a backing, Venetian ambassadors convinced a group of Albanian lords to defect from Skanderbeg, who were quickly defeated after Skanderbeg reconsolidated his army after his defeat at Berat. Near the end of 1456, Skanderbeg's son, John, was born. Being a direct descendant of Skanderbeg, John was appointed as the new heir to Skanderbeg's domain. The change in Skanderbeg's heir angered Skanderbeg's nephew and former heir, Hamza, who quickly defected to the Ottoman Sultan after fighting with the Albanian rebellion since its inception. Mehmed II promised Hamza control of Albanian lands if he could defeat his uncle, Skanderbeg. To help him achieve his goal, Mehmed granted Hamza the control of a large Ottoman force of 80,000 men, which Hamza used to launch an invasion of Albania during the summer months of 1457. The invasion force was quickly defeated after only barely penetrating Albania territory during the fall of 1457. After Hamza's defeat, Skanderbeg was as popular among European rulers as ever. Though by this time, much of the material support of the Albanian rebellion had ceased. Only in war did other European powers support Albania, including the Catholic papacy, which had supported the Albanians materially since the rebellion's beginnings. The final and largest blow to the Albanian rebellion's support came from the death of King Alfonso V of Naples in 1458, who had been the sole greatest supporter of Skanderbeg. This lack of materials in which Skanderbeg needed in order to continue his rebellion coincided with large uprisings within many of the far reaches of the Ottoman Empire. This drove the Ottoman Sultan to propose a 3-year truce between the Albanians and his sultanate in the first months of 1461. Skanderbeg, much against the wishes of major European powers, accepted Mehmed's offer. This time of peace, in which the Albanians had not had in almost 2 decades, was used almost solely to rebuild the country. Following the death of King Alfonso V, his son and heir, Ferrand, had trouble securing the Neapolitan throne. Seeing this as an opportunity to improve relations with Ferrand, Skanderbeg led a force of 3,000 men across the Adriatic Sea into Naples. While in Naples, Skanderbeg destroyed Ferrand's enemies. This aid that Skanderbeg provided to Ferrand forged lasting lines between the Kingdom of Naples and Albania.
In late 1463, the Ottomans sent 3 small forces into Albanian territory. They were all swiftly ended, and the large fortress of Elbasan was constructed by Ottomans in central Albania. This stalemate caused the Ottomans and Albanians to sign a 10-year truce. This fortress proved of importance when in 1466, an extremely large force of 100,000 Ottoman men invaded Albania. They besieged Kruja for the second time, but it proved unsuccessful. However, Albania was devastated by the rampages of the Ottoman army. Although in late 1467, most of Albania was recaptured, besides the fortress of Elbasan. While planning a siege on Elbasan, Skanderbeg succumbed to the plague. The death of Skanderbeg in early 1468 was a great shock to European powers, and it caused mourning and tragedy throughout all of Europe. It was recognized by many, even large figures such as King Ferrante I, who had been unmistakably aided by Skanderbeg in previous years. His death was the final blow to the rebellion struggle. The last pocket of Albanian resistance in Kruja held out during its 4th siege, until finally falling at the end of the siege in mid-1478.
After the death of Skanderbeg and the defeat of the Albanian rebellion, the Ottoman Empire continued to expand its influence in the Balkan Peninsula over the next centuries, where it would remain as the dominant Balkan power until its defeat during the First World War. Today, Skanderbeg and his rebellion are considered to be the Albanian people's defining moment. Even though the Albanian rebellion may seem to have been pointless, the Albanian people's dreams have been accomplished in the modern age, and the Albanians now have a state that their 15th century ancestors dreamed for and struggled to establish. Without Albania's diplomatic ties with other European powers, it and its people would not have been able to resist Ottoman rule. The modern-day Albanian identity would not have been established without the struggle and sacrifice that Skanderbeg and the Albanian rebellion endured.